Hey all, it's Matt. I'm here to give you a review after over 80 hours into Elden Ring Nightreign. When this game was released, I was stoked. Another Elden Ring game? Awesome. Can't go wrong here. A chance to jump back into a co-op game and fight tough Souls bosses? Check. New bosses at the end to test our skills? Check. Exploring my favorite game's worlds and foes all over again with friends? Also, check. I was certain this game would be fun for months, maybe even years, especially given its co-op features and future updates plan, but the cracks started to show almost instantly. Right away the first time playing, I felt like something was off. As a matter of fact, I was certain the game felt unfinished before I even finished my first run. Okay, that doesn't make sense. But if you think about it more, it makes you understand where this review is headed. There's companies out there like Ubisoft that have no issue churning out 6 out of 10 games on a monthly basis, but this is FromSoftware we're talking about. They made Bloodborne, a towering game that I'm fairly certain Sony will hold on to with their dear life for another 10 years. They made Elden Ring. You know that game that made you think it might be time to go outside for a little while? They made the Dark Souls series, which got me into Souls games, and made me realize the sense of achievement you feel when you take down a tough boss or a well-designed boss. They made a ton of great games, and unfortunately, Elden Ring Nightreign isn't one of them. First, let me go over how the game works, then I'll discuss the issues that are plaguing Nightreign and why it often feels half-baked. First, you are thrown into Limveld, an area you'll quickly know all too well. This is the same map for most playthroughs, with a rotating area called Shifting Earth that changes roughly 15% or so of the map. This area becomes less likely after you beat the final boss though, and you become more likely to literally see the same map over and over again. The map locations are mostly randomized, particularly the churches, which you'll have to go to if you want to upgrade your health flasks. The items are of course randomized too, as well as the field bosses you'll run into. The night bosses are random to an extent, however, this seems like a smaller selection for each night that's dependent on the final boss you pick. A lot of times I ran into similar bosses in the field, often only slightly relocated elsewhere. I cannot even tell you how many times I've seen the Bell-Bearing Hunter, Loretta, Tree Sentinel, and the Ancestral Spirit, the Moose. It got to the point where I felt like I was often running into the same 10 or 12 bosses in the field, just relocated to different spots. But I thought Elden Ring had over 100 bosses. What about Shadow of the Erdtree? There's only the Hippo, that's it. Dark Souls, 6 bosses across the entire series. We can't expect anything from Bloodborne, but what about a Sekiro boss mixed in for Executor to take down? Nah. Just the same base game bosses that you've seen 100 times, dumbed down to even less and relocated to spots that aren't even that far from where you probably last saw them. It's a singular definition of redundant, and the visuals are often too familiar, all the time. So how's each round work? Well, each round is made up of about 45 minutes of play. You'll have day 1, night 1, day 2, and night 2, then the final boss. In between, you'll face similar randomized bosses and find fairly basic items in most of the chests you'll open. Often it'll be one weapon with a basic Ash of War at level 1 or 2, and then you'll see a different weapon with another basic Ash of War. It's not that often that you run into the best weapons in Elden Ring, and keep in mind, there aren't really Shadow of the Erdtree or Dark Souls weapons. Seriously, it's basically running around Limgrave with a group and randomizer. You'll have to take down a Night Lord at the end, of which there's currently 8 of. However, these are easily the best part, can't complain much here. From the soundtrack to the fights themselves, these are done very well. Boss poses a challenging threat to you and your allies, and you'll need to think quickly to win each map and hope what you grabbed along the way could take you to victory. It's the one time where I think the game really works well, when you're finally at the end and you find out how well your character can handle the final boss based on a combination of skills and weapons you've picked up. I should mention that I've now beaten every boss, all of them at least twice, and some many more times than that. I do not find the game that difficult even for an average player like myself, and I have no real complaints about difficulty scaling besides one thing, but it is a glaring issue. And it comes down to how random matches work. There's no communication. You're basically throwing darts and hoping one team hits. Even if you're the type to carry, you may find immediately that you're now in a match with a guy that goes down every single fight, and you're left carrying them to the end knowing you might not beat the Night Lord. This is with randoms, and of course we can forgive new players, but this all boils down to a massive problem I have with the game up until the final Night Lord. It's too damn easy. This game is cake until you get to the Night Lord, so there's a good chance that the player getting dropped over and over again is going to end up at the final boss, where you'll likely lose as well as drop 40 minutes that you put into the round. This is simply because you'll rarely lose on night 1 or night 2, and it makes you want to drop out of a match early if you're with a bad group. But of course there's a penalty for dropping out of too many matches, so you often stick it out and try your best, even if it means knowing that player that you're with that's going down constantly is going to die immediately as soon as the Night Lord pops up. I found this makes the repetitive cycle even worse with random groups, and I highly recommend playing with friends until they add communications, if they ever add them. Since we were talking about obvious issues, there's another glaring one I'd like to point out. Nightreign is really fun when it feels random. It's actually incredibly fun, but often it doesn't. You're looking at the same map over and over again, and there lies another issue with Nightreign. It fatigues you really fast. In games like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and even Souls-like games like The First Berserker, Lies of P, and Lords of the Fallen, locations have prided themselves on looking different and unique. This game doesn't look unique at all, and as a matter of fact, it's often like staring at Limgrave and Elden Ring and never getting the chance to head to Liurnia of the Lakes. The same look, with often the same bosses repeated again and again, hoping that a different weapon roll will pique your interest. It doesn't do that often enough though, and I'm sure if they update this game with more maps, I would be able to take my second major complaint out entirely. Like seriously, did they expect us to just walk around the same location over and over again and call it a roguelike? Hey, I'm not a roguelike player for the most part, but I'm willing to bet a lot of people familiar with Elden Ring bought Nightreign having no idea of what it offered, and I'm here to tell you, it doesn't offer much to look at. Another issue is relics, which I'll talk about now. It's another major issue in Nightreign. Aside from boss relics or the ones you get from remembrance missions, they rarely matter. There's very little to grind for in what's supposed to be a grindy and random game. A couple of points of one stat here or there mean nothing over another, and you're often using either boss, remembrance, or status effect relics to feel any difference. It's unbelievably limited, and honestly, it's as boring as the map is. Now for the gameplay and combat, which of course is good, but this is to be expected with the FromSoftware formula. You can't depend solely on combat though, and it's obviously why Elden Ring's player count peaked around 2 weeks after launch through reviews and word of mouth, where Nightreign is already losing players left and right. The problem I found that I'm having, well, and I've been hearing the same exact complaints of, is that Nightreign often feels half-baked. Kind of like when we mentioned Ubisoft, handing the title out to a new maker to give them a chance, but also a lower budget and without Miyazaki at the helm, the game suffers for it. Yes, FromSoftware deserved to grow as a company because they make great games. They've made the best games I've ever played, and it's why Nightreign often feels like a low-budget Souls spin-off mixed with a roguelike. Look, I'm trying to have fun with this game, and there are times when I am, but I'm already getting bored with the style of play. This is coming from someone with thousands of hours into Elden Ring. The other night I turned on Elden Ring for the first time in nearly a month. I had an absolute blast. It was fun as hell making builds and fighting bosses. Nightreign should be too, but unfortunately the game is duller than its counterparts. It's like a vague representation of a title you knew and loved, or like it was made with the sole purpose of existing rather than actually being a game with longevity. I want to get into Nightreign further, and I've been making content for it, trying to enjoy it the most I can. I want to quickly mention the things I love about the game. Playing an Elden Ring looking game with friends, the Night Lords, the combat, and of course the soundtrack too. There's a lot to love when you first start playing, but I don't think a game that's advertised as a primarily co-op game, despite not being live service, should be boring after you've beaten the 8 Night Lords. A lot of the armors look similar too, and unlocking rare relics is often a boring and repetitive grind that most skilled players may not even need in the end. This game probably would have succeeded more if it had some live service elements, and if we were guaranteed more maps and bosses in the future. Now Fall will give us some DLC, and if you bought the deluxe edition, it's supposedly included. Hopefully this adds a new map, new bosses, and weapons from other FromSoftware titles. I know what you're thinking, why not play another game? Trust me, I'm going to be very soon. As one new tough Night Lord boss a week, that is just a further variation of the same ones that we've already faced, is simply not enough to keep me interested. Nightreign excels at several things, but clearly misses the mark on many others, and unfortunately, it's a game that's meant to be played for a long time, but cannot possibly carry that weight. This isn't PvP, we are playing enemies here, and you've had multiple good games to pick from, yet we've only seen mostly base game Elden Ring bosses and enemies. It's a weird design choice, and really does often feel like someone said, what if we combined Elden Ring and Fortnite? And someone else said, that'd be great. That's it. Game was made. But should it matter that it's come at the cost of fans? And those that worry that now FromSoftware's multiple smaller titles being made will look more like Nightreign and a lot less like Elden Ring and Dark Souls? Elden Ring Nightreign can be fun, super fun at times, but it also suffers from being redundant and boring at times too. There's a lot to like, especially when first starting out, from good graphics to an amazing soundtrack and combat to back it up, but the foundation can only last for so long, and what we end up with is a half-baked Ubisoftware title that is mostly a mid-journey through what is a much better game in Elden Ring. will fade quickly at the rate it's going, and soon we'll easily forget that it even existed in the first place. Is it because it's a terrible or awful game? No, it's functional and even fun at times, but it is certainly a game I'd grab on sale, and one I cannot see myself pouring hundreds or thousands of hours into like Elden Ring. Instead, I'll be looking for feedback on subscribers are playing, and moving on, barring updates. I want to state that I didn't hate Nightreign, nor do I think it's a straight up cash grab like some people have claimed. It's just a half-baked idea that wasn't implemented properly. It really has a lot of potential still. If they were to update it, fix some things, add new maps, and add more to it, or make it even more like a live service game, I think it could have kept people around for months or even years. But at the rate it's going, and from feedback I'm getting from my subs as well as people playing the game, it seems like everyone's going to drop a online co-op game rather quickly, and the reason is very simple. It's because the game is incredibly redundant, there's not enough randomization to it, and it just looks bland after a while. Now it's time to give Elden Ring Nightreign a score, a game I played on PC with a 4070 graphics card, and it's ran well. There were a few dips here and there, but overall it was a good looking game, even if it's a very samey looking game. When I thought about giving Nightreign a score, I'd have to factor in my 80 hours of play, as well as what I didn't like and what I liked. For me, this is a 6.5 out of 10, an above average game that could have been made by anyone else, and I'm fairly certain we wouldn't even still be talking about it. But this is FromSoftware, and I can only hope that the future is much brighter, that we get titles more similar to Dark Souls. FromSoftware doesn't turn into a company like Ubisoft that churns out the same titles reskinned time and time again. I hope you all can appreciate and respect my review, but of course if you have any thoughts, put them below. I really wanted to love this game, I just can't in its current state. Hope you enjoyed my review and concerns for the future of the franchise. Elden Ring 2 would be great, but I guess that's a dream for now. Hell, at least we were getting a movie. Anyways, I'll catch you later. Be sure to comment and subscribe for more Souls content, and hopefully the next FromSoftware title will be a great one.